Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Farhat Asif, and I am the founder president of Institute of Peace and Diplomatic Studies and curator for Global Women Insight. I'm here again today with all of you with another amazing episode of a powerful and amazing woman who has an enriched and diversified experience in helping women in their leadership journeys by truly providing them the global experience. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm joined by Ms. Eileen Alma, who is the director of the International Center for Women's Leadership at Coady Institute. Let's all welcome Eileen.
Hello, everyone, and Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you so much, Eileen, for joining us. It is an amazing to have you on our show. People who are watching us, I would like to share with you that Eileen has an experience of more than 3 decades working for women leadership, women empowerment, and creating and curating a lot of interdisciplinary experiences and programs in developing their management experience. Of course, Eileen has its own experience and focus of women empowerment, their leadership development, political, economic, and social and legal, and helping them bring forward their true abilities. And ladies and gentlemen, I was one of the graduates from Coady as well. And I'm so happy that my mentor Eileen has joined me. Eileen, to begin with, let us know about your own beginning of your journey as Eileen, and what has over the years you have passed through as professionals. What are your experiences over the years, and when your journey all started till now?
Well, thanks very much, Farhat. My name is Eileen Alma, as you've already said, and I'm from Canada. I was born and raised in Southern Ontario, not too far from Toronto, for those of you that know a little bit of the Canadian geography. I'm the oldest of 4 children. I'm the oldest daughter as well, and I've really had a varied experience in terms of my education and my studies. I started out actually when I graduated high school thinking I was going to be a high school teacher down the road, and my first studies were in French and English literature. And then I quickly realized that I don't think I really wanted to be a teacher at the time, but it never, completely went away from my mind. In 1992, I moved to Ottawa, and I was finishing up some school there. And then I started to work for the Embassy of Ethiopia. And I worked really closely with the ambassador of Ethiopia at the time. And she herself she was a woman, which, I found to be extraordinary. And she was very dynamic and very strong. And I certainly looked up to her in many of the qualities of leadership that she had in what is considered to be, I think, a pretty patriarchal system. It's rare when you see, particularly African countries, when you see those kinds of dynamic women also taking up those roles. And I learned a lot of things from her. I learned what it means to be strong and what it meant to also deal with patriarchy on a day-to-day basis. I also learned a lot about the politics in Africa and particularly in Ethiopia. And later on, due to my short time working for the Ethiopian embassy, it was then that I also met my husband, who comes from Ethiopia as well. And he came to Canada in the 1990s, having been a refugee following, civil war in his country. I've since gone on to do degrees in ethno-political peace and conflict. I studied at Royal Roads University. I also did a master's program in project management. I've also done studies on refugees and forced migration. So education-wise, that's the formation of my training and my expertise. But probably one of the most defining periods of my career was when I worked for the International Development Research Center, which is based in Ottawa, and it's an organization that funds researchers around the world in developing countries. And IDRC is funded by Act of Parliament. It's created by Act of Parliament. In fact, it's its 50th year this year. It's just celebrated last week the 50th anniversary of IDRC. And the work that we did or that they continue to do at IDRC, but work that I did at IDRC was to support a whole range of initiatives of research projects around the world that were especially focused in on policy orientation. So applied research that could have influence on policy and practice. I started a lot of that work I was much younger, of course, in my career. I supported teams of work in the Middle East peace process, as an example. I've also, and there I worked quite a bit with Palestinian refugees as one of those areas of work. Later on, I started to work in the peace and conflict team, and then I branched into working in sub-Saharan Africa quite a lot, and then in Southeast Asia. And then beyond that, I was also working on women's rights and citizenship. And that's really where I have to say, I started to really dive deep into the challenges and the inequities that women face globally. And I had the good fortune of working with a very strong team of feminist scholars when I was at IDRC, who essentially were my mentors in this area, and really opened my eyes to a whole range of dynamics that need to be thought through when you're looking at development, no matter the country you're in. So after quite a long time, 20 years at IDRC, I then in 2013 I found out about the Coady Institute, which is based in Eastern Canada, in a very small town right near the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. And there was an amazing director, vice president at the time. His name is Dr. John DeVenta, who was he just recently retired as the head of research at the Institute for Development Studies at University of Sussex. And I was thinking to myself, and I knew John's work, and I was thinking, what is this man doing in this little part of Nova Scotia, this small part of Nova Scotia? What is it about Coady Institute that attracted him? And I saw that there were a couple jobs that were opening up. One, that they were looking for a new director for the Center for Women's Leadership. So I took a chance, and I looked at it, and lo and behold, I ended up making the big move to Coady. And the reason why I'm so delighted to be working at Coady is because it's allowing me to do something that is really critical to me, that I was not able to do quite in the same way when I was working at IDRC. And that is, how is it that we can support women who, at the grassroots level, who themselves have the expertise, who themselves have the knowledge, who know what their communities need? How can I just at least help one woman every single day? And what is it that I can do to accompany her learning journey? And this is what I'm able to do at Coady. This is what excites me every day, is being able to work with women from a whole range of backgrounds and experiences all around the world, and help them move forward on their leadership journeys.
Amazing journey, Eileen, and I witnessed that as well when I was there in Coady with you, and I saw that, and you have shared many stories. And then my fellows who are listening to me right now, we are in conversation with Miss Eileen, who is the director of the Center for International Women Leadership Program there in Coady Institute, and heading that, and part of the group that is building the leadership journeys within inculcating the journey and leadership abilities within women. Eileen, you've been sharing a lot about your journey so far, and I have seen a lot of women as icons in your life who had been very instrumental. But do you have someone as a father, brother, or who was as a man instrumental in your life, who had made you go forward and move towards the journey that you are on right now?
It's interesting you asked me that, because we spend a lot of time talking about both female role models as well as male. And in terms of male role models, I must say, of course, my father is a model to me. I think one thing that he always did for me he came from himself, I would say, humble background in terms of education. But he always pushed me to go further, and never stopped or never stood in the way of, whenever I said I'm going to go and do this degree, I'm going to do, take on this piece of work. He was one that always supported me along the way. And then I have to say that some of the strongest mentors that I've had in my career have been men. And I think I've already mentioned John Gaventa and the kind of inspiration that I had from knowing that he was here at Coady at the time, and the work that he's done. But there were others as well that that I worked with at IDRC that have since moved on to other positions that saw something in me and were not and didn't hesitate to help me with my professional development. So, when I was at IDRC, there were many times where I was surrounded by men and women with, PhDs, in fact, of course, you would expect that in a research institute, PhDs, many master's degrees. And then there was here was me. And often thinking, am I good enough to be in this place? Why do I think I deserve to be working in a space like this? What is it that I have to offer? And how can it compare to what others do, whatever others have and what others do? And this is a tendency that we have as women to not really think of ourselves as strong enough, as good enough. But a few of these men in particular really saw the potential that I had, and supported my professional development. In some cases, they offered financial support that I was able to get through the center, and always kind words, never afraid to give me a reference whenever I needed it, and it made all the difference for me. Made all the difference, and made me think, yes, maybe I do have that value. And clearly, I think differently now, and I certainly talk a lot about this with other women. Is how do we make sure that we understand that we are enough, that we are capable, and it doesn't matter what others around you have or don't have. It's you have the potential to do just about anything that you set your mind to. So those are the male influences. But for me, also the female influences are really, really important. And when we offer classes at the Coady Institute, including the one that you took, the Global Change Leaders Program, Farah, we often start off by saying, we talk about men quite a bit, and strong male role models, but women, who are the women around us that we are also looking to for inspiration? And we get a lot of different answers from our classmates, our participants in the classes, and it often comes back to their mothers. In fact, many will start off by saying, it was my mother. It's my mother that inspires me. It's the leadership that she takes in the home, as a starting point. It's her selflessness that she has. And then we move beyond that into public spaces and talk about women that particularly inspire us. But to me, it's about the everyday. And, I've shared a story with others about, my own mother, and would she have thought about herself as a woman leader? Probably not. But she's raised 4 children from a very young age. She's managed her finances with very little. We all turned out great. My mother-in-law, who was Ethiopian, who has since passed, supported 27 people between 2 households, was divorced, had really nothing to her name, and yet her greatest satisfaction was knowing that her children were happy. She is a leader in my eyes, and those are the kinds of women that inspire me. And I think we cannot neglect that that important group of women. It's not all about those that are in high positions. It's about those that inspire you on a day-to-day basis.
And while we're talking about, thank you so much, Eileen. While we're talking about men in our lives. I met your amazing husband. I mean, and that experience of course, cross cultural experience. It is an overseas experience as well, because
Mm-hmm.
he's from Ethiopia and you kind of moved to Ethiopia and try to adjust what the values or cultures his family had and your family. There's a two different kind of combinations. So what was that experience, and what has made that experience to uplift you and understand the diversity around you as well?
Well, I'm glad that you raised my husband, of course, because for me, he's the rock. He's a rock,
Yes.
and for those of you that have had the good fortune of meeting him, you'll know that he himself has had a life that's been very challenging. Leaving your country, going to be a refugee in another country, then coming to Canada. Very little English along the way. He had a lot of medical issues at times, um, and here he is, this strong African man, and we met and we fell in love. And so for us, there was immediately a lot of different challenges in terms of the cultural differences. But what we've had to do is really work hard at understanding how we can work best as a team and break down a lot of gender stereotypes, or a lot of gender conceptions about what a husband and wife do in a household.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, so it's never been the small things for us. It's about really how do we work together as a team. And so imagine I'm in a position where I'm a director, and there's no way sometimes I could do that job without knowing that he has my back at home. And it's
Exactly.
often him that's been taking on the roles of the caregiving, of ensuring the household needs are met. And so for me, I've been very fortunate in that we've moved past an understanding that men and women have to be doing certain things, and that doesn't mean that it works out every time. I mean, I think there's a lot that needs to be understood about what that means for masculinity and how we define masculinity, just as much as as we define femininity. But it does, and so it takes time, and it also, understanding also societal perceptions of the way that we work as a team. But at the end of the day, I can say that we value each other equally as individuals, and everything that we do for the betterment of our own family. And yeah, like I said, I couldn't do the work that I do without him. He's integral to
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And we would really like to know about the cultural experience that you had. He is a rock. We met him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's an
Mm-hmm.
amazing human being. We would
Mm-hmm.
like to know about the experience of different cultures that you had. I mean, you married to an Ethiopian family, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
what was that, and what has created you to learn from those experiences? Especially, you've been talking about your mother-in-law and her
Mm-hmm.
leadership, positions as well. So, what are those?
Mm-hmm.
You know uh, interlinked made you interlinking situations where you are from different culture and they were from different cultures. So how did you manage to mingle and create your own identity within that and build that leadership journey forward as you are today? I mean, what was that twist in your life?
Mm. Well, I don't think that there's a simple answer to it. I will say that it has been hard work, right? So, as an
Yeah.
example, the first times that I went to Ethiopia with him, the first time I went, I was young, and I had just had my son, my firstborn child, and we were traveling
Yeah.
together to meet the family. So we were married. We weren't married in Canada. We weren't married in Ethiopia. We were married in the Dominican Republic, just the two of us. And so that's another story.
Okay.
But the first time we went together as a family to Ethiopia, it was quite overwhelming for me. The way in which family is so important, of course, in the Ethiopian culture. It's not like here in Canada where you're kind of in these sort of nuclear bubbles. a family, which is not in everybody's case, but there, when we arrived in Ethiopia the first time, there was 30 people waiting for us at the airport, right? There was another 30 people waiting at the house. It was a very big celebration. And here I am. I was quite conscious of being this white woman coming into the family and wasn't sure what to expect.
Yeah.
But it was my mother-in-law actually who was incredible. In fact, she embraced me as her own daughter in many, many different ways. And because of that, I became very comfortable very quickly. Now, the other, there's a lot of things to learn and to think about in terms of the ways in which we manage cultural differences. But at the same time, she made it easy. She made it very easy for me. And so I don't know that I don't know that everybody would have had that same situation. But I will always be white, and I will always be, I'm not an Ethiopian woman. And I think for a long time, I also felt at times that I had to try really hard to fit well into the culture or into the community. And that's not so simple to do. There's quite a vibrant community, Ethiopian community in Canada. They're amazing. But with it is, other things are interwoven with it. Religion, politics, diaspora politics in particular. So having to be very careful about, where I interject myself and where I don't is quite critical, right? So I'm married an Ethiopian man. That doesn't make me an Ethiopian woman, right? I don't claim that space, but what I do consider myself is an ally to Ethiopian women. And again, people like my mother-in-law were absolutely essential for me to find that space. And as I became more more involved with and understanding more about the Ethiopian culture, it became even more important for me to understand how best we could I could find a way of supporting and working with women there. And the Ethiopian women's experience is not unlike experiences that you see in many other countries. Where there's issues with gender-based violence, there's issues with women's rights and access to land and resources, and things are improving, but we have a lot of work to do across the board, and to ensure that gender equality is achieved. So I'm roundabout way just to say it's complicated. It's complicated to have that intercultural dynamic, and I'm very proud. And this year we're celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. So we've obviously had some staying power.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, excellent. That's amazing. And 25 years, I mean, saying is easy than celebrating. I mean, he's amazing husband. I mean, of course, to an amazing woman, of course. Eileen, over the years, over all these years of your leadership journey, your own evolution of becoming what you are today, you must have faced a lot of challenges. Tell us about them and how you built your strategies to overcome those challenges. How did you do that? I mean, it must not have been an easy ride, and it must not have been easy for you to do whatever you are doing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so how was it? What are
I've
the
had
challenges that
yeah, you're right. I've had many opportunities, but I've also had many challenges. It's hard work. It's been hard work getting to the point that I'm at now, and I'm sure that many women can say the same. I think some of the challenges I've had have been to be is number one, and it's a bit sad to say, but the higher you sort of move yourself, or the further you move yourself professionally, sometimes the harder it is to understand that there's critiques everywhere. There's people that want to bring you back downwards, and so really, I think part of the challenge for me has always been that I'm a bit of an empath, I feel things very deeply. And so when I feel like there's people out there that are not happy with me, or that they are not, or that they're not satisfied with something I do, I feel it very deeply. And so the key learning for me, and it sounds simplistic, and you've probably heard this before, is learning to not care so much about what people think is probably the number one lesson I can tell anybody, right? Especially when you're in a leadership position. Understand and know yourself. And when you know yourself, you make a decision, and sometimes those decisions are going to be the right ones, and sometimes they're not. But you stick with them, and you ask yourself, did I do the best I could at that time with the resources I had? I forget the woman who told me that, but it's actually, no, I don't forget. It's my dear colleague, Carrie Lynn Paul, who's on my team. She said, did you do the best you can with what you had at the time? And those are words to live by. Because if you can say that, then you should be, you should give yourself some ease, right? Hindsight is always 2020, but that's great. But in the moment, when you're dealing with a crisis, or when you're dealing with some really challenging situations, you do what you can with what you have in hand, and what skills and resources that you have. So those are, that's, to me, that's an underlying thing for me, because I'd like to be a people pleaser, but it's very, very difficult to do that for everyone. I think the other thing is, over time, just learning to know myself, and to appreciate myself, and to love myself. Those are things that you have to cultivate, right? Society, all of our various societies, and the cultural context that we come from, have put in our brains an image of the way that we should be as women. And so we're constantly trying to measure up to some unattainable level that we think is out there, because culture dictates it, or because we've seen it in others. And those are great, but those are, just as I said, they're unattainable. So how do you learn to love yourself, and how do you learn to respect yourself, and to trust your own instincts? That comes with time, knowing yourself, and knowing that each step on the way in your journey is going to lead you to some new insights, and some new things that will change and shape the way you are, that you will move ahead. But that doesn't change the core of you, right? There's still something in you that you have to cultivate, that inner person, that inner peace with yourself. And again, that's something, I'm already, I'm just a little over 50. And I can and I'm not afraid to say that it's taken me those 50 years to understand myself, and I'm still a work in progress, right? And anyone that says that they're not is lying to you. Even the most accomplished men and women, there's things that are deep down that you really have to sort of unpack and look at. And then institutionally, as I've elevated, as my positions have elevated, as leadership positions, for example, here at Coady, there's a whole range of organizational challenges that you can have, and or Coady Institute and other organizations I've worked with have all faced varying challenges over time. So those in and of themselves are things that you learn, and I think that having people that you can rely on to talk to, that are removed from the situation, that can offer you a fresh eye, is really important, which for me connects to the idea of mentorship and coaching, or just peer support. All of the things that we really do talk about in the courses that we offer. So I think that as I've moved up in my own leadership role here at the Coady Institute, I've realized the importance of participation, of remembering that your ideas can be great, but if they're just your idea, then they're not going anywhere. So, really, the importance of participation, of really thinking about the direction you want to head in as an organization, the importance of strategic thinking and planning. And one thing that I really want to emphasize, and we work on in the programs that we offer, is that area of critical thinking and strategic planning, or as I call systems thinking, right? So understanding the big picture and how things can connect while still being able to drill down into the minutia. That's something that every day I'm learning about. But probably the most important thing, and it connects to the idea of participation, the most important thing that I think that I've taken away from both the really positive work that I've done, as well as the hardest work that I've done, is the importance of relationships and relationship building. And none of the work that I do here at the Coady as a leader, I can't do any of that on my own. I am not one person, right? I have an amazing team of women that I get to work with every day, and who also help bring out the best in me, and I hope that I can also bring out the best in them. So those are some of the things. I mean, they're not just specific challenges, but there's a whole range of those, and all organizations face them. But for me, relationship building at the end of the day is what it all comes down to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eileen, for giving us such a wise and experienced thought about your challenges in the leadership and how we can overcome. Of course, with the experience of say 5 decades and experience of those people who are coming, at least they can hear you and they can listen to you, and they can also learn exactly. And those people who are just joined me, we are in conversation with another amazing woman, my mentor, Miss Eileen Alma, who is the director, International Center for Women Leadership at the Coady Institute there in Canada. And many of my colleagues from Coady Women Leadership Program has also joined us. And if you have any questions, by the way, you can also ask Eileen, and we are in conversation. We can ask questions and then we can answer. Eileen, as we are discussing about women leadership and leadership positions as well, how you think that this patriarchy, which is at the heart and core of the challenge that women are facing across the world, patriarchy, and since when we talk about women here in Pakistan or the global south, as you say, and they say that women there in global north, they don't face that patriarchy. They are independent. They are more facing a lot of independence. How would you say that? And then you can share about this myth breaking that this patriarchy is everywhere. It's there in the north, there in the European countries, there in Canada, there in the US. It's everywhere, and it's at heart of the feminism movement. At least it's one of the biggest challenges that we are facing. Your insight about that can also break that myth as well.
Well, absolutely, the
About
patriarchy
and experiences as we are facing. Yeah.
Absolutely, patriarchy is everywhere, right? And it goes hand in hand with systems that we're operating in. At the end of the day, patriarchy can come down to this simply being that there is certain among us that have advantage and others do not. That systems that we are operating in are designed to preference men in particular, and to the detriment of others, and it perpetuates inequalities. And it's not just a question of inequalities between men and women, but a whole range all along a gender spectrum, along class, along caste, race, of course, ability, or as some would say, disability. I mean, all of these come to play when you're talking about patriarchal systems. And yes, they are everywhere. They're often, at an organizational level, you can see them set up you can see how patriarchy is strengthened in hierarchical systems, for example, right? Who's at the top in the leadership roles? How many women are in those spaces? When they are in those spaces, what kinds of opportunity do they have to lead, to speak, to speak out, to be at the forefront of the decision making, right? Because just because you're in a leadership role doesn't necessarily mean you're still giving the opportunity. Or, what if you are the one woman amongst a number of men in a leadership space? What portfolio are you being offered? How are they listening to you? How are they also explaining things to you? Are they, what's the nature in which conversations are happening? Is there an understanding of the way in which women are disadvantaged in relation to men or other marginalized groups or groups that are historically underrepresented in leadership spaces? All of that, it plays out no matter where you are. It plays out in universities. We see that everywhere around the world. Universities can be very hierarchical. So what are those spaces? How is gender equality being brought into those spaces? Those are conversations that are happening, on a daily basis here and elsewhere. But I want to also emphasize, that patriarchy also rears its head even where you think that it's not going to. So we have to be very mindful, especially us that are in the feminist movements or in the women's movements or leading women-led organizations, that we don't also fall into the trap of patriarchal structures, because sometimes we, as women, we ourselves are perpetuating those patriarchal structures. So how are we creating spaces for other women to come along with us? If I'm in a leadership role, how am I taking my hand and reaching and bringing other women along with me? In what ways can we create more opportunity for full participation and for allowing women in particular to feel empowered and be able to move forward as leaders in their own right? That takes time to do. It's not easy. I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about feminist organizations. The government of Canada a couple years ago introduced a feminist international assistance policy, and I'm so excited that they did that. And they've really made a push in terms of the support that Canada provides globally to thinking about gender equality in a very, very robust way. But what does that mean for an organization that is not structured in a way that really has brought feminist principles to bear? What is it that we have to do as leaders to reimagine the way in which we structure our organizations to make them more equitable and inclusive? That's work that's very difficult. Myself, I've also experienced, my own lack of learning or lack of education in this space. That's particularly because I'm a white woman. I have a certain level of privilege that others don't. And every day I must challenge myself to think about, okay, how am I responding here in ensuring that space has been created for those that are not necessarily like me, a white woman like me? Am I really doing my job at ensuring that I'm an ally for others that would not have not been traditionally allowed into those leadership realms? And I can say right now that I still have a lot of learning to do about how do we break down white privilege, how do we acknowledge and then act on inequalities that are borne out because of race, class, caste, etc. So every day for me is a learning, and I'm really fortunate that I work with women who help me and who guide me also in that way. And who also say to me and hold me to account saying, it's not our job to teach you, it's your job to go out and get the information and to learn. And they're so right. They're so right. So, that requires almost daily thinking, almost daily reflection, self-reflection on, how you're doing and how you can do better to end that. And that will then bring about the whole idea of what patriarchy is. Now we're in a moment right now that we can't ignore. Like, we can't have this conversation without understanding that in the middle of it all, we're in a pandemic. I was part of another call yesterday and was listening carefully to some of the thoughts of different speakers who were saying that, of course, the pandemic is a moment for us to also recognize globally that what we've been doing has not been working, right? What we have built,
Yeah.
which is largely on patriarchal structures, actually don't work, or capitalist structures doesn't work. What's the most important things for all of us right now? We're back down to the needs of the basic human needs for all people. Well, as feminists, as women, we've already been thinking like that all along. So how can we now elevate some of that? How can we say now, okay, yes, we had the ideas in hand. We understand what it means to have community participation. We understand the importance of taking care of one another and ensuring no one's left behind. How do we recreate the world that we want to be in as we're coming out of this pandemic? How do we not slide backwards? I'm very concerned right now that while at the moment we can see possibly the potential for gains and for recognition and in fact celebration of key women leaders who are being noticed for the work that they're doing at this crisis moment. But I don't want to see us slide backwards on any gains we've made, as few as they've been, any gains that we've made on gender equality. I'm very, very worried about that. And there's other big things that are on our minds right now as well that are quite a concern, such as gender-based violence. And we've certainly had many webinars and discussions with Coady graduates that have talked about, how terrifying and how critical it is to be looking at gender-based violence at this moment. So these are things these are thoughts that are going through my head. And I think I probably went off track of what you asked me originally, Farhad, about the patriarchy.
No, it's good to hear you, and the thoughts and those ideas, and of course your insight about what is happening around us, especially related to the woman. This also gives me an idea that why not you share with us about the Coady Institute and its programs, because there is a lot of enthusiasm from my colleagues around, and while I was there in Coady as well during the program in Global Change Leadership Program, and there was a lot of excitement, and there was a lot of interest about learning about Coady. And when I announced this interview as well, there were many questions, and there were many friends who were asking about these programs and how can they be part of. So you should share with us about that, about this Coady Institute, and then the leadership program that you're overseeing that there.
Oh, sure, I'm happy to. And at the Coady Institute, I am the director of the International Center for Women's Leadership. And the Center for Women's Leadership has now been around for 9 years. We'll hit our 10th year next year. It was created in 2011 by other amazing women leaders like Senator Mary Coyle, who was the director of the Coady Institute at the time, and wonderful, wonderful supporters that we have, financial and otherwise. So the center is almost a decade old, and what I'm realizing is the demand keeps growing year by year. The demand is growing by women for support in addressing some of these big questions, these questions that we just started to really talk about today, Farhad. How can they ensure that their organizations are effective? How can we move particular sectors forward, whether it's healthcare or inclusive economies or building resilient communities? These are lots of different things that are on our minds that also respond to the thematics that we run here at the Coady. So how can we help women on sort of 3 different levels? First of all, yourselves as women leaders, and strengthening your capacities, and also strengthening your confidence as women, right? That's the first. The second is, supporting you in terms of the position that you occupy within your organization and your community, right? And the third is really how do we build a better society, starting with our own communities at the local level. So our focus really is on community leadership, and and how women are occupying spaces there and supporting their communities to build on the assets that they have rather than on deficits. This is what we've been doing for 9 years, and we're going to continue to do it. Coady's made the focus on women's leadership a priority. It's central to the work that it's doing, along with working with youth and working with Indigenous peoples as well. And so the Global Change Leaders Program, which is the 7-week program that we've been offering since 2012, which is the one that you attended, continues to be on offer. This past year, or this year actually, 2020, we received 1,844 applications for that program, and we have 20 spaces, right? So, what's been preoccupying me now for several years is, how can we reach out and best support more women than we've been able to do just by trying to bring 20 women and bring them here to Nova Scotia, which is wonderful, but it's limiting, right? And so what can we do? So we've now been in the last couple of years started to really look at how we're going to build out regionally and offer programs, whether they be in in the Middle East or in South Asia, or in all across sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America. This is my goal, is that we can do that, but I don't want to do it just by saying, okay, here we go, we're offering a program X, and just have people coming in. The goal isn't for us to replicate Coady. The goal for us is to work with meaningful partners who are already leaders and experts in their own right in their communities, and partner with them to say, how can we support you in reaching out and developing women's leadership programs? And the other thing that's of interest to me in particular is, having brought through a number of women leaders into our programs, they themselves are leader educators. So the ways in which I can help mentor more women to also be educators in their own right, to be running programs in their own countries, that's, for me, the most exciting thing. It's about, again, seeing that be replicated. And it doesn't need to be owned by Coady. It needs to be owned by you. It needs to be owned by the communities in which you're operating. So that's where I'm headed. That's where Coady's headed. And I think we've got a couple really exciting projects that are happening as well with a certain number of countries. And the question is just how much can we do with the resources we have? How far can we go? I'm excited about that. In addition to that, we also have some, I think, very exciting plans in the works for this year. And we're mindful of the pandemic, and you can imagine, I'm sure, how difficult it is right now to bring people to Canada. It's next to impossible at the moment. But we will be running an online program in the fall on women's leadership, which will likely be a 7-week offering. My colleague, Dr. Robin Newstater, has been offering a peace building course for women leaders online already. It's been quite successful. That will continue as well. We are also going to be looking carefully at the Global Change Leaders Program and how that can start to be further enhanced and brought to different regions, like I mentioned. And already we're looking at a shorter program that will be offered in Chile once things calm down, with our partnering organization EPES. And then we are also, as a team this year, in September, planning to have a virtual conference for all of the Coady graduates and beyond on women, peace, and security. And that will take place over a week, and there'll be a number of different events that will happen all online. And we're really excited to roll that out. More information will be coming in the next couple of weeks. So lots of different work, different pieces of work, in addition to the big projects that we already have ongoing. But for me, I'm always thinking about, okay, how can I reach out to you in Pakistan? What is it that we can offer together in Pakistan? Is there something to do there? the same as I'm thinking about for other countries. And the sky's the limit. The challenges are only going to be human resources and financial resources, and I'm sure we can get there.
Yeah, and amazing. And those people who would like to have any questions or any concerns, or they want to apply for the program, you can follow this Twitter handle that is shown on the banner. You can see that. You can also go on the website coady.stfx.ca. You can also go online. And Eileen, those applications are open, or what are the deadlines right now? Or the Global Change Leader Fellowship has closed application, or it's still ongoing? Is it open?
The Global Change Leaders is already closed for the year, and right now we're looking at when that's going to happen. Because of the pandemic, we may have to change the dates, which is unfortunate for us, but gives us an opportunity to also do other things. For the online programming, stay tuned. We should be having some announcements in the next couple weeks. And I've only been speaking just about the women's leadership courses, but of course, there's a whole range of other Coady offerings that are all very useful for women leaders, whether it's focused on climate change or it's looking at the future of work. There's a range of different topics that you may be interested in. So we're just getting reorganized because of the change to our way of operating right now, but all of that should be online in the next couple of weeks at on the website that you've got shown. And if people have particular specific questions that they want to ask, they can write to us at womenlead@stfx.ca. womenlead@stfx.ca. Maybe we can type it in the chat area as well if they'd like that. Womenlead, all one word, @stfx.ca. That's the email address where you can get in touch with us.
Yeah, you can send an email to you can send the email to you can send here the email, and then you can also be in conversation with Eileen for any program that Coady Institute offers, especially related to your organization work or your leadership work or any subject, because there are a range of programs that Coady Institute is offering to not only women. I mean, there are men and organizations and anybody who wants to learn and grow further. Eileen, there's a lot of questions are being people are sending a lot of love to you, and I've seen that there are I mean there are questions. One of the fellow from our part, she sent that lovely to see you smiling face again, Eileen.
Nice.
And then South Africa, we have seen Arif Anis. Arif Anis is based in UK and he's a leader himself. He says that invaluable insights. And then we have seen Anika Jacobs. Remember Anika? Our fellow?
Anika, yes, very much. Yes, I've seen the comments here.
Sending greetings from
What's in store for Africa? She's asking. Anika, you're asking about Africa, and Africa it is very much on all of our minds at Coady. Right now, we've just started a new project with Global Affairs Canada that at least benefits 2 countries in Africa. That's Ethiopia and Tanzania. And that program, it was a major partnership with Global Affairs Canada. Is specifically for women's leadership and women's empowerment. So we're really excited about that. We also have a new program that is in partnership with Care Canada that's looking at education for young women and girls and their transition into post-secondary spaces or into vocational training or employment. That's in Zimbabwe, and that's another 4-year initiative. Those are the kinds of things we want to continue to develop. I've been getting a lot of requests from countries like Nigeria and Cameroon. They're high on our list. I know Coady overall has a huge interest in continuing our work in South Africa, where Anika is from. And I would be remiss to say, if I didn't say that there's also a lot of great programming that's happening around asset-based community development, which could take us into a whole other conversation. So Africa is
Yeah.
very much on our mind, and my intent, or our intent at the Coady, is to see how we can best leverage the different opportunities that we now have through the Global Affairs programming and others to offer regional courses there. And I think that's really where I'd like us to go, and again to be working with graduates like yourselves in the delivery of those programs. You yourselves have the expertise already. We are not there to come in and educate you. Yes, there's things that we can share. We have a particular subject matter expertise, but the knowledge already rests within you and rests within the community. So, to me, it's really about partnerships and looking at how we could build some of those partnerships. And if anybody does have an idea about that, I'm seeing also Kenya and Salome's comment, and so many others. If you have an idea, please do reach out to us. I'll do my best to respond in a timely way. But again, looking at here at the possibility of partnerships, so that we all feel that an ownership over a program that we put together. That it's not just about, like I said, Coady coming in and offering something. So our team has lots of work to do, especially when we see the kind of demand that we see. These are applications coming to us that are very serious, that people are that women really want to build. They want to be part of a different world. They want to be change agents in their own rights. They're already change agents. And I guess one of the value adds that we provide is the ability to connect you with other like-minded women leaders around the world. Farhat, would you have thought, you had a wonderful cohort of women. Who would have thought that you would have been connected with so many women?
And few of them are here with me as well. So there were thoughts coming from O'Day, who says thanks for bringing Eileen out there and bringing us together. So there are a lot of Rosario, I don't know where you're from, but thank you so much for sending your love. Bob Jahangir, Vani Arshad has said thank you. Mavish Afriti, thank you Mavish for joining us. Mitali was one of part of us. She's from Bangladesh. Mitali is here. Anika
and Rosario is from Peru as well. Rosario's from Peru.
So Mavish is one of the entrepreneur here in Pakistan. She was a finalist for 2019 program from Pakistan, and she could not join because of the visa issues. And she is saying for some regional, she's anxiously waiting for some regional programs. So these are visa issues has also, barred people to travel to the programs as well. These are some of the challenges that, So Robin, thank you, Robin, for sharing. Robin is here. Thank you so much. About the visa issues, traveling was difficult.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, I mean,
I was asking about this question from Mavish.
Well, on the visa issue, I recognize how challenging that is for women. And it's getting more challenging now that you also, for many of you, you have to also go through this whole biometrics exercise just in order to get the visa, which means that you have to travel. In addition to trying to travel to Canada, you have to often travel even just to get a visa. And that's no small feat. So I want to just recognize and send a shout out to all of the women who applied for visas and gone the extra mile, because they feel it's so important to get here and to take a program like the ones that we offer at the Coady. That's a big thing. I also want to recognize that women need these kinds of opportunities. It's very difficult to prioritize yourself when there's so many other things that require your financial resources. You're taking care of families. Maybe your parents, perhaps. Maybe you're just trying to get yourself in a position of some security. So for many people, courses like the ones that we offer can feel out of reach for women. And then never mind the cost of the course, but it's also, actually taking time away And for many of you, having to negotiate getting that time away, speaking with your spouse, having your spouse agree to it. So these are things to me that are really important to recognize. And yet, I firmly believe that there are times in your life where you have to put yourself first, and you have to try to, to pursue the dreams that you have. And the space that we can offer women leaders is often the only space they'll ever have in their life to focus on themselves. And so I recognize that, but I also recognize just how hard it is and how far you have to come in order to make that happen. So we're constantly looking at ways of how we can support women without an additional burden. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be free, or that we have, programs that have no cost at all. And in fact, that's not actually what we want to do either necessarily. We think it's important that you feel invested yourself in a program. But, we recognize all the challenges that women have. And so looking at ways to make courses and programs accessible is something that is the direction I am continuing to take moving forward.
Thank you so much, Eileen, for this wonderful note and a message to everyone who is listening. Thank you so much, my sisters from across the world who are here, who were there with us and share comments and questions. To my very dear mentor, Eileen, this was a special episode that we had before we head for the holidays and Ramadan ending, and we are heading for the Eid. This was a special episode, ladies and gentlemen, Global Women Insight. We were in conversation with an amazing leader, amazing woman, my mentor, my sister, my elder sister, everything. And we were in conversation with Miss Eileen Alma, who is the director of International Center for Women's Leadership at Coady Institute in Francis Xavier's University, which I always try to pronounce it very right, but they're in Canada. Thank you so much, Eileen, for the wonderful insights and for your time. I hope that many of those who were with us, we have shared with you the Coady link. We have shared with you the email address. You can go and on the Twitter. You can also see there as well. You can also see the website. You can also see the institute's entire website. You can see the email that we had shared before, womenlead at stfx.ca as well. And you can also see again this whole conversation in the video in our YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part with me, and let me say good night to everyone. And Eileen, thank you so much.
Thank you, and everybody, please stay safe and stay well. And we're thinking about you and looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Eileen.